Danny Martinez pushed his cleaning cart down the long metal hallway of Kepler Station. The wheels squeaked a little, but he had learned to ignore sounds like that. He had been working here for 3 years now, and the station always made noise. Metal creaking, air systems humming, and the constant chatter of aliens speaking in languages he did not understand. The station was huge. It floated in space between 3 different star systems, and beings from 12 different worlds came here to talk business and make deals. Danny had seen them all by now. The tall Valorians with their crystal-like skin that sparkled under the lights. The Nexari who glowed with soft colors when they talked to each other. The synthoids who looked like walking machines made of metal and wires. None of them ever really looked at him. To them, he was just part of the background, like the walls or the air vents. He cleaned their messes, fixed their broken things, and stayed out of their way. That was fine with Danny. He liked quiet work. His shift started the same way every day. Wake up at 5 in the morning in his small room in the human quarters. Check the computer for broken things that needed fixing. Grab his tools and his cleaning, supplies. Start walking the halls. Today was no different. The computer told him that Section C had a leaky water pipe, Section F needed new light panels, and the main conference room needed a deep clean after yesterday's big meeting. Danny loaded his cart and got to work. He started with the water pipe. It was in a narrow space behind the wall panels, and he had to crawl on his hands and knees to reach it. The leak was small but steady, dripping into a puddle that had been growing for days. Danny turned off the water, removed the old seal, and put in a new one. Simple work, but important. Small leaks became big problems if you ignored them. While he worked, he could hear voices from the main hallway. Aliens talking, in their own languages, making deals and arguing about things Danny did not understand. Politics, trade agreements, territory disputes. The same conversations happened every day, just with different people. Danny finished the pipe and moved to Section F. The light panels were easy to replace, but he had to use a ladder to reach them. As he worked, a group of Valorians walked by. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, with skin that looked like it was made of blue crystal. Their voices were deep and serious. The mining rights to Sector 7 are not negotiable, one of them said in perfect English. Many aliens spoke English now because humans had become common on trade stations like this one. Your people have no claim to that territory, another Valorian replied. The Nexari found it first. Danny kept working on the lights. He had heard this argument before. The Valorians and Nexari had been fighting over some asteroid field for months now. Every few days, representatives from both sides came to the station to yell at each other in the conference rooms. After finishing the lights, Danny went to the main conference room. This was where the big meetings happened. The room was large, enough to hold representatives from all 12 species, with special seating for each type of being. The Valorians needed strong chairs for their heavy crystal bodies. The Nexari liked soft surfaces that did not interfere with their natural glow. The synthoids just needed power outlets to plug into. The room was a mess. Papers everywhere, food, containers left on tables, and some kind of purple liquid spilled on the floor. Danny had learned not to ask what aliens ate or drank. Some of it looked normal. Some of it looked like nothing he had ever seen before. He started cleaning systematically the way he always did. Pick up the trash first, then wipe down the surfaces, then mop the floor. While he worked, he listened to the conversations in the hallway outside. More arguments about mining rights, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. The humans have been quiet lately, he heard a synthoid say. Its voice sounded like it came from a computer. Their representative has not spoken in 3 meetings. Humans are still new to galactic politics, an Nexari replied. Danny could not see the alien, but he knew it was an Nexari because of the musical quality of its voice. They do not understand the complexities of our relationships. Danny smiled a little as he mopped the floor. The aliens talked about humans like they were children who did not understand the adult world. Maybe that was true. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for about 10 years, and most of the other species had been traveling between stars for hundreds or thousands of years. But Danny had been in the military before he came to work on the station. He had seen things and done things that would probably surprise the aliens if they knew. Not that they would ever ask. To them, he was just a janitor who pushed a cart around and cleaned up after important people. As he finished mopping, Danny heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Kelly Brooks was coming back from her shift in the hydroponics bay. She was one of only 12 humans on the station, and the only one who talked to him like he was a real person instead of just a maintenance worker. "Hey, Danny," she said, poking her head into the conference room. "How was your day?" "Same as always," Danny replied. "Fixed a pipe, changed some lights, cleaned up after the diplomats. You?" "The Nexari want to try growing some of their homeworld plants in our gardens," Kelly said. "Apparently their food tastes better when it is grown in soil instead of the artificial nutrients they usually use." "That sounds complicated," Danny said. "Everything is complicated when you are dealing with 12 different species," Kelly laughed. "But that is what makes it interesting." After Kelly left, Danny finished his work and put his tools away. Tomorrow would be another day of the same routine. Fix what was broken, clean what was dirty, and stay invisible while the important people made their important decisions. He walked back to his small room in the human quarters, passing groups of aliens in the hallways. They were still talking about the same things they always talked about: territory, resources, power. The big questions that shaped the galaxy. Danny closed the door to his room and sat on his bed. On his desk was a small photo of his old military unit, taken on some distant world he could barely remember the name of. Young men and women in uniform, smiling at the camera. Most of them were probably scattered across human space now, working normal jobs and living normal lives. He looked at his arms, covered by the long sleeves of his maintenance uniform. Under the fabric were reminders of a different life. A time when he had been more than just a janitor who cleaned up after aliens. But that was a long time ago, in a different part of the galaxy, when humans were fighting their own wars instead of trying to fit into someone else's peace. Danny turned off the lights and went to sleep. Tomorrow would bring the same routine, the same invisible work, the same conversations he was not part of. And that was fine with him. Some people were meant to be in the spotlight, making speeches and negotiating treaties. Other people were meant to keep the lights on and the water flowing. Both jobs were important, even if only one of them got noticed. Danny's alarm went off at 5 in the morning, just like every other day. He got dressed in his maintenance uniform and checked the work orders on his computer. Today looked busier than usual. The cooling system in the central hub was acting up, and several aliens had complained about the temperature being too hot. The central hub was the heart of Kepler Station. It was a massive round room with a high ceiling, where all the main corridors connected. Important meetings happened there, and representatives from different species gathered to talk business. If the cooling system failed completely, the whole area would become too hot for most aliens to use. Danny loaded his cart with extra tools and headed to the hub. When he arrived, he could see the problem right away. One of the main cooling units was leaking coolant fluid all over the floor. The blue liquid had a sharp chemical smell and was slowly spreading across the metal floor plates. Several aliens stood around the edge of the room, looking uncomfortable. Valorians were especially sensitive to heat because their crystal skin absorbed energy from warm air. A group of them stood near the entrance, clearly wanting to leave but apparently having important business to discuss. Danny set up warning signs around the coolant spill and got to work. The leak was coming from a valve that connected two large pipes above his head. He would need to climb up on a ladder and work in a tight space between the pipes and the ceiling. As he climbed the ladder with his tools, Danny could hear the aliens talking below him. Commander Zexhai, a Valorian with dark blue crystal skin, was speaking with Ambassador Kretal, a Nexari whose body glowed with soft green light. "This temperature problem proves that human maintenance standards are insufficient, Commander," Zexhai said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "My people cannot conduct business in these conditions." "The humans are doing their best with limited resources," Ambassador Kretal replied. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Perhaps we should consider hiring additional maintenance staff from the Synthoid Collective." Danny reached the broken valve and examined it carefully. The problem was worse than he had expected. The coolant had eaten away at the metal seal, and fixing it properly would require removing several connecting pipes. This meant he would have to shut down the cooling system for at least 2 hours while he worked. But first, he needed to stop the leak that was still dripping coolant onto the floor below. Danny positioned himself between the pipes and reached for the main shutoff valve. The space was tight and he had to stretch his arms over his head to reach it. The coolant was still leaking, and some of it splashed onto his uniform. The chemical was not dangerous to humans, but it would stain his clothes and make them smell bad for days. Danny decided he had no choice but to remove his maintenance jacket and work in just his undershirt. He pulled off the heavy jacket and hung it on a nearby pipe bracket. Now, wearing only a thin white undershirt, he continued working on the valve. The coolant leak was finally under control, but he still needed to replace the damaged seal. Below him, the conversation between Commander Zexai and Ambassador Kretal had stopped. Danny glanced down and saw both aliens staring up at him with expressions he had never seen before. Commander Zexai's crystal features had changed color, shifting from dark blue to a lighter shade that Danny had learned meant surprise or shock. "By the eternal stars," Commander Zexai whispered. His deep voice carried clearly in the quiet hub. "Look at his arm." Danny looked at his own right arm and realized what they were seeing. His military tattoo was visible for the first time since he had started working on the station. The tattoo covered most of his forearm, from his wrist to his elbow. It showed a compass rose in the center, surrounded by dozens of small geometric shapes and symbols. More aliens began to notice the commotion. A group of synthoids approached, their metal bodies clicking as they walked. Dr. Wilex, a tall gray alien from the Zephyrian species, also came closer. Within minutes, representatives from 6 different species had gathered in the central hub, all staring up at Danny's exposed arm. Danny felt uncomfortable with all the attention. He had always been careful to keep his tattoo covered because he thought it might make the aliens ask questions he did not want to answer. Now everyone was looking at him like he had grown a second head. "What does it mean?" Ambassador Kretal asked. Her green glow had shifted to a brighter yellow, which Danny knew meant curiosity or excitement. Danny continued working on the valve, trying to ignore the stares. "It is just a military tattoo," he said. "I got it when I served in the Colonial Defense Force. Military service?" Commander Zexai stepped closer to the latter. "What kind of military service?" "Combat engineering," Danny replied. He finished removing the damaged seal and started installing a new one. "I specialized in explosive ordnance disposal." The aliens below exchanged glances that Danny could not interpret. Commander Zexai said something in the Valorian language to his companions. Dr. Wilex spoke quietly to the synthoids in their electronic communication system. "Each symbol represents a different device?" Commander Zexai asked. Danny looked down at his arm again. "Each shape represents a different type of explosive device I successfully disarmed during the Outer Rim conflicts. The compass rose shows the different approach angles I had to use." The silence that followed was complete. Even the normal background noise of the station seemed to fade away. Danny finished installing the new seal and tested the valve. The leak had stopped and the cooling system was working normally again. "How many devices?" Dr. Wilex asked. His voice was high and precise, like most Zephyrians. Danny counted the symbols on his arm. 43 different types. Some of them I encountered multiple times, but I only marked each unique design once. Commander Zexai stepped directly under the ladder. "Human, look at me." Danny climbed down from the ladder and faced the tall Valorian. Up close, Commander Zexai was impressive. His crystal skin reflected the lights of the hub, and his eyes were like blue diamonds. "I am a veteran of the Valorian Defense Corps," Commander Zexai said. "I have served in combat for over 30 cycles. I recognize some of these symbols." "Okay," Danny said, not sure what the Valorian wanted him to say. "These symbols," Commander Zexai pointed at Danny's tattoo, "match the marking system used by Valorian military engineers to catalog the most dangerous explosive devices in known space." Danny put his maintenance jacket back on, covering the eye. Tattoo. I would not know about that. I just disarmed what needed to be disarmed. You disarmed Valorian military explosives? Dr. Wilex asked. I disarmed whatever the colonists were using, Danny said. During the conflicts, people used whatever weapons they could find or build. Some of it was human technology, some was alien tech that had been modified or jury-rigged. Ambassador Cretal glowed brighter. You approached these devices from 47 different angles? Sometimes the standard approach would not work, Danny explained. Maybe there were obstacles, or maybe the device had been modified in a way that made the normal procedure dangerous. You had to adapt to each situation. The aliens looked at each other again. Danny could sense they were communicating in ways he could not understand. Finally, Commander Zexhai spoke. Human, what you describe should be impossible. Valorian explosive devices require teams of specialists and advanced computing systems to disarm safely. The approach angles must be calculated precisely using mathematical models. Danny shrugged. I did not have teams or computers. I had my tools, my training, and my experience. When you are alone in a combat zone, you learn to work with what you have. You worked alone? Dr. Wilex asked. Usually. Sometimes I had a partner, but most of the time it was just me and the device. The gathering of aliens continued to stare at him. Danny felt like he was being examined under a microscope. He had just wanted to fix a coolant leak, and now he was the center of attention in a way that made him very uncomfortable. I should get back to work, Danny said. The cooling system needs a full inspection to make sure there are no other problems. But as he pushed his cart toward the exit, he could hear the aliens beginning to talk among themselves in urgent, excited voices. Something about his tattoo had changed the way they looked at him, though he could not understand why. For the first time in 3 years, Danny Martinez was no longer invisible. The next morning, Danny woke up to find 3 messages waiting on his computer. 2 were from species he had never heard from before, and 1 was from Dr. Lisa Chang, the human cultural attaché. All 3 messages asked him to come to conference, room 7, as soon as possible. Danny had never been invited to conference room 7. It was one of the most important meeting rooms on the station, reserved for high-level diplomatic discussions. He usually only went there to clean up after meetings were finished. When he arrived, he found the room full of aliens. Representatives from 8 different species sat around the large conference table. Dr. Chang was there too, looking nervous and excited at the same time. Danny, please sit down, Dr. Chang said, pointing to an empty chair. These representatives have some questions about your military service. Danny sat down carefully. The chair was too small for Valorians and too big for most other species, so it was probably designed for humans. He had never sat in a conference room chair before. It was more comfortable than he had expected. Commander Zexhai spoke first. Human Danny Martinez, we have been researching your species' military conflicts. We have learned some disturbing information. Disturbing? Danny asked. The Outer Rim conflicts you mentioned, Ambassador Cretal said. Her glow was bright orange, which Danny had learned meant intense interest. Our databases show these were colonial disputes that lasted for 12 Earth years. Is this correct? About that, yes, Danny replied. Different colonies had different ideas about independence and trade rights. Some conflicts were small, others lasted for years. Dr. Wilex leaned forward. Our records indicate that during these conflicts, human military personnel regularly encountered improvised explosive devices, booby traps, and jury-rigged weapon systems. Is this also correct? Danny nodded. Colonial militias used whatever they could find or build. Standard military equipment was expensive and hard to get, so they made their own weapons using salvaged parts and whatever explosives they could find. This is what disturbs us, Commander Zexhai said. The devices you disarmed were not military-grade explosives built in factories. They were improvised weapons created by desperate people using random components. That made them more dangerous, not less, Danny said. Factory-built weapons follow predictable patterns. Improvised devices are unpredictable because every person builds them differently. The aliens exchanged glances. Dr. Chang cleared her throat. Danny, They want to understand how you were able to disarm these devices without advanced equipment or computer support. Danny thought about how to explain it. You learn to read the device. Every person who builds a bomb or a trap has a way of thinking. They follow patterns, even when they do not realize it. You look at how the components are connected, how the circuits are laid out, how the trigger mechanism works. After a while, you start to understand how the builder was thinking. You understood their psychology? Dr. Wilex asked. I guess you could call it that. You learn to think like someone who is scared and angry and trying to hurt people. You understand what they want the device to do, and then you figure out how to stop it from doing that. A new voice spoke up. It was Captain Thorne, a member of the Helix Collective that Danny had never seen before. This intuitive approach to complex mechanical systems is unknown to us. Our specialists require complete technical specifications and detailed analysis before attempting any disarming procedure. We did not have time for detailed analysis, Danny said. In a combat zone, you might have minutes or seconds to make a decision. You learn to trust your instincts and your experience. Dr. Chang spoke up. Danny, they want to know if other humans have similar abilities. Most combat engineers learn to work this way, Danny replied. You have to adapt to situations quickly. Every mission is different. Every device is different. You cannot rely on following the same procedure every time. Commander Zexhai stood up. Human Danny Martinez, what you described should be impossible. The devices you disarmed included Valorian military explosives that require teams of specialists to approach safely. Our procedures are developed over centuries of experience and calculated using advanced mathematics. Your procedures work well when you have time and resources, Danny said. But sometimes you do not have those things. Sometimes you just have to look at the problem and figure out a solution. Ambassador Kretal's glow shifted to a deep blue. Danny, my people have been dealing with a problem for over 60 years. Ancient defense systems on our homeworld have been malfunctioning. They fire randomly at anything that moves, and they have killed dozens of our technicians. That sounds dangerous, Danny said. Our best engineers cannot solve the problem. The systems are too old and too complex. We have asked the synthoids for help, but even their advanced analysis capabilities cannot find a safe solution. Dr. Chang leaned forward. Danny, they want to know if you think you could help with their problem. Danny felt uncomfortable. These were some of the most important people in the galaxy, and they were asking him to solve a problem that their best experts could not handle. I would need to see the systems first. I cannot make promises without understanding what I am dealing with. Of course, Ambassador Kretal said. But based on your experience, do you think such a problem could be solved? Danny thought about it. Defense systems are usually built by people who are trying to protect something important. They follow logical patterns, even old ones. If the IE systems are firing randomly, there is probably a reason for it. Maybe they are responding to something that was not there when they were built. The aliens looked at each other again. Captain Thorne spoke up. You would approach this problem without detailed technical specifications. I would start by watching what the systems do. When do they fire? What triggers them? What patterns do they follow? You can learn a lot by just observing before you start trying to fix anything. Dr. Wilex made a sound that might have been laughter. You would observe malfunctioning weapon systems that have killed dozens of trained technicians? I would observe them carefully, Danny said, from a safe distance with proper precautions. Commander Zexhai sat back down. Human Danny Martinez, what you suggest is exactly what our specialists said could not be done safely. Maybe your specialists are thinking about it the wrong way, Danny said. Maybe they are trying to solve the problem like it is a puzzle with a single correct answer. But old defense systems are not puzzles. They are tools built by people who were trying to solve a specific problem. If you understand what problem they were trying to solve, you can usually understand how to work with them. Dr. Chang smiled. Danny, I think you have just explained something very important about human problem solving. What do you mean? Danny asked. Other species approach problems by gathering complete information and using established procedures. Humans approach problems by adapting to incomplete information and improvising solutions based on experience and intuition. Ambassador Kretal glowed brighter. This explains why humans have been successful in situations where other species have failed. You do not need perfect conditions to find solutions. We work with what we have, Danny said. That is just normal for us. Commander Zexhai stood up again. Human Danny Martinez, on behalf of the Nexari government, Ambassador Kretal formally, requests your assistance with our homeworld defense systems. Danny looked around the room at all the important representatives staring at him. A week ago, none of them would have noticed if he had disappeared completely. Now they were asking him to solve a problem that could save millions of lives. I am just a janitor, Danny said. No, Dr. Chang said quietly. You are much more than that. You just never had a chance to show it before. Danny thought about the long years of invisible work, fixing small problems that no one else noticed. Maybe it was time to try fixing a big problem that everyone had noticed but no one could. Okay, he said, I will try to help. 3 days later, Danny found himself on a ship heading to the Nexari homeworld. The ship was called the Starwind, and it was the fanciest vessel he had ever been on. Everything was smooth and clean, with soft lights that changed color to match the time of day. Danny was not traveling alone. The ship carried 12 alien observers from 6 different species. They all wanted to watch him either succeed or fail. Most of them seemed to expect failure. Dr. Vex, a synthoid specialist, had spent the entire first day explaining why Danny's mission was impossible. The defense grid consists of 47 energy cannons, Dr. Vex said in his computer-like voice. Each cannon is protected by automated security systems. The systems have killed 23 Nexari technicians in the past 60 years. How? Do you know the exact number? Danny asked. Because we keep careful records of everything, Dr. Vex replied. Precise data is essential for problem solving. Danny nodded but did not say anything. He had learned that arguing with synthoids was pointless. They believed that every problem could be solved with enough data and computation. Sometimes that was true, but sometimes it was not. Ambassador Kretal spent the second day showing Danny holographic images of the defense grid. The images showed massive energy cannons built into the sides of mountains around 3 major Nexari cities. The cannons were beautiful in their own way, covered with flowing designs that seemed to move like living things. Our ancestors built these systems over 800 years ago, Ambassador Kretal explained. They were designed to protect our cities from an ancient enemy called the Devourers. What happened to the Devourers? Danny asked. They were defeated long ago, but the defense systems cannot be safely shut down because we lost the original control code centuries ago. Danny studied the images carefully. The cannons looked like they had been grown rather than built. The Nexari had a way of making technology that looked organic, like plants or living creatures. When did they start malfunctioning? He asked. About 60 years ago, they began firing at random targets instead of responding to proper authorization codes. Sometimes they fire at birds, sometimes at ground vehicles, sometimes at nothing visible at all. On the 3rd day, they arrived at the Nexari homeworld. Danny had never seen anything like it. The entire planet seemed to glow with soft colors, like someone had painted it with light. The cities were built into natural landscapes, flowing with the shape of hills and valleys instead of fighting against them. The ship landed at a safe distance from the first defense grid. Danny could see the energy cannons in the distance, built into a mountain that overlooked the city of Velnara. Even from several miles away, the cannons looked enormous and dangerous. The closest our technicians have been able to get is 2,000 meters, Ambassador Kretal said. Beyond that distance, the security systems detect any approach and begin firing. Danny put on the protective suit that the Nexari had provided for him. It was made of some kind of flexible material that could stop energy blasts, but it was lighter than he had expected. I want to walk around the perimeter first, he said. That is extremely dangerous, Dr. Vex warned. The systems could fire at any moment. I will stay at a safe distance, Danny replied. I just want to observe how they behave. For the next hour, Danny walked slowly around the mountain where the defense grid was located. The alien observers followed him in a heavily armored vehicle, staying well back in case the cannons started firing. Danny noticed several things that the alien experts had not mentioned in their reports. First, the cannons did not fire completely at random. They seemed to fire more often when certain types of vehicles were nearby. Second, they fired in patterns that looked almost like they were tracking invisible targets. Third, they fired more, frequently during certain times of day. Ambassador Cretal, Danny called over his communication device. What kind of technology do your people use for transportation and communication? We use electromagnetic pulse systems for most of our vehicles and communication networks, she replied. Why do you ask? What kind of technology did the Devourers use? The enemy your ancestors built these defenses against? There was a long pause. According to our historical records, the Devourers used electromagnetic pulse technology as their primary energy source. Danny stopped walking and looked up at the cannons. I think I understand the problem. What do you mean? Ambassador Cretal asked. Your ancestors built these systems to detect and destroy anything that used electromagnetic pulse technology. That was how they identified the Devourers. But now your own civilization uses the same type of technology. Dr. Vex's voice came over the communication system. That is impossible. Our analysis showed no correlation between electromagnetic signatures and firing patterns. Maybe your analysis was too complicated, Danny said. Sometimes the simple explanation is the right one. Danny continued walking around the perimeter, watching the cannons carefully. Every time a Nexari vehicle passed nearby, the cannons would track it for a few seconds before losing interest. Every time a communication signal was transmitted, the weapons would shift slightly in the direction of the signal. The cannons are not malfunctioning, Danny said. They are working exactly as designed. They are trying to destroy anything that matches the electromagnetic signature of the Devourers. The problem is that your modern technology accidentally matches that signature. But how do we fix it? Ambassador Cretal asked. Danny thought about it. I need to get closer to the control systems. There should be a way to modify the targeting parameters without shutting down the entire grid. Getting closer means certain death, Dr. Vex said. The security systems will detect you and fire immediately. Not if I approach them correctly, Danny replied. I need to understand how your ancestors thought when they built these systems. They were trying to protect their people, not kill them. There has to be a way for authorized personnel to approach safely. Danny spent another hour studying the mountain and the cannon placement. Finally, he noticed something that the alien experts had missed. There was a pattern to the way the cannons were positioned. They were designed to cover all possible approach routes except one. There. Danny pointed to a narrow path that wound up the side of the mountain between two cannons. That path is in a blind spot. The cannons cannot target anything that approaches from that direction. How can you be certain? Dr. Vex asked. Because your ancestors needed a way to maintain and repair the systems. They would not have built defenses that prevented their own people from reaching the control mechanisms. Danny started walking toward the path. Behind him, he could hear urgent conversations in multiple alien languages. Some of the observers were arguing that he should not attempt such a dangerous approach. Others were calculating the probability of his survival. The path was steep and narrow, but Danny had climbed more difficult terrain during his military service. It took him 30 minutes to reach the first control station, built into a cave near the base of the main cannon. The control station was beautiful and strange. It looked like it had been grown from crystal and metal, with flowing organic shapes that seemed to pulse with internal light. Danny had never seen Nexari technology this old, but he could see the same design principles that appeared in their modern equipment. He spent 20 minutes studying the control mechanisms before he found what he was looking for. The targeting system had three main components: threat detection, signature analysis, and firing authorization. The signature analysis component was comparing all detected electromagnetic sources to a stored pattern that represented the Devourers. Danny could not read the ancient Nexari script, but he understood how the system worked. It was actually quite simple. He needed to modify the stored pattern so that it would not match modern Nexari technology. Using his basic tools and his understanding of electromagnetic systems, Danny carefully adjusted three key settings in the signature analysis component. He could not eliminate the Devourer pattern completely, because that would disable the defenses entirely. but he could narrow the pattern so that it would only match the specific electromagnetic signature that the Devourers had used, not the broader signature that modern Nexari technology produced. The work took 2 hours. When he finished, Danny called down to the observers. "I think it is fixed. Try sending a vehicle past the perimeter." A small Nexari ground vehicle approached the 2,000-meter mark where the cannons had always started firing. Danny held his breath as the vehicle crossed the invisible line. Nothing happened. The cannons tracked the vehicle for a moment, then returned to their normal scanning pattern. "By the eternal light," Ambassador Kretal whispered over the communication system. It worked. Danny climbed back down the mountain path. When he reached the bottom, he found all 12 alien observers staring at him with expressions he had never seen before. It was not just surprise or disbelief. It was something close to awe. "How did you know?" Dr. Vex asked. "Our analysis teams have been studying this problem for decades." Danny shrugged. "Sometimes you have to think like the people who built the system instead of thinking like the people who are trying to fix it." The news of Danny's success spread across the galaxy faster than he had expected. Within a week of returning to Kepler Station, he found messages waiting from species he had never heard of. Governments wanted to hire him. Scientists wanted to study him. News reporters wanted to interview him. Danny ignored most of the messages. He went back to his normal routine of fixing broken things and cleaning up after important people. But now the important people noticed him. When he walked down the hallways with his cleaning cart, aliens would stop their conversations and nod, respectfully. Some even said hello. "You are famous now," Kelly Brooks said during their lunch break. She was eating a sandwich made from vegetables she had grown in the hydroponics bay. Danny was eating the same protein bars he always ate. "I do not want to be famous," Danny replied. "I just want to do my job." "But you saved millions of lives on the Nexari homeworld. That is not something you can just ignore." Danny shrugged. "I fixed a broken system. That is what I do every day here. The only difference is that this system was bigger and older." Kelly laughed. "I think you are the only person in the galaxy who would describe ancient alien defense systems as just another repair job." But Danny's life was changing whether he wanted it to or not. Dr. Chang had been promoted to head of human relations for the entire station. She spent most of her time in meetings with alien governments who suddenly wanted to understand human capabilities. "The Valorians want to hire human engineers for their military," Dr. Chang told Danny during one of their weekly check-ins. "The Synthoids want to study human problem-solving methods. Even the Helix Collective is interested in human intuitive approaches to complex systems." "What did you tell them?" Danny asked. "I told them that humans are not a resource to be hired or studied. We are partners in the galactic community, and we should be treated as equals." Danny smiled. That sounds like something they needed to hear. 3 months after the Nexari incident, Danny received a visit from Captain Roy Hayes. Captain Hayes commanded a small human diplomatic vessel called the Spirit of Earth. He was one of the few humans who held a high position in galactic politics. "Danny, I have a proposal for you," Captain Hayes said. They were sitting in Conference Room 7, the same room where Danny had first been asked to help the Nexari. "The Galactic Council wants to create something called the Human Integration Initiative." "What is that?" Danny asked. "It is a program to place humans in advisory positions throughout alien civilization. Not because we have better technology, but because we have different ways of solving problems." Danny felt uncomfortable. "I am not qualified to be an advisor to anyone. I am just a maintenance worker." "That is exactly why you are qualified," Captain Hayes said. "You approach problems without preconceptions. You work with incomplete information. You adapt to changing situations. These are skills that other species struggle with." "Other species are smarter than humans," Danny said. "They have been traveling between stars for thousands of years." "Intelligence is not just about knowledge or technology," Captain Hayes replied. "It is also about adaptability and creativity. Humans excel at both." Captain Hayes showed Danny a list of positions that needed to be filled. Agricultural consultants for worlds with failing crops. Engineering advisors for planets with infrastructure problems. Even diplomatic observers for species that were having trouble communicating with each other. Kelly Brooks has already agreed to be an agricultural consultant on a synthoid world, Captain Hayes said. They have been trying to grow food in artificial environments for centuries, but their crops keep failing. They need someone who understands how to work with natural systems instead of trying to control them completely. Danny thought about Kelly leaving the station. She was one of the few people who had always treated him like a friend instead of just a maintenance worker. She will be good at that job, he said. The Nexari government has specifically requested that you consider a position as a systems advisor, Captain Hayes continued. They want you to help them understand other ancient technologies that they have been unable to repair or modify. I like working here, Danny said. This station needs maintenance too. Captain Hayes smiled. That is another option. The Galactic Council has agreed to upgrade Kepler Station to serve as the headquarters for the Human Integration Initiative. If you stay, you would be working with humans and aliens who are learning to solve problems together. Danny looked around. Conference room 7. 6 months ago, he had never even been inside this room. Now he was being offered a chance to help shape the future of human-alien cooperation. What would I be doing exactly? He asked. The same thing you have always done, Captain Hayes replied. Fixing things that are broken. The only difference is that now everyone will understand how important that work really is. Over the next few weeks, Danny watched as Kepler Station transformed. New human staff arrived to work alongside the existing alien personnel. The maintenance department was expanded and upgraded. Danny was promoted to Chief Systems Advisor, though he insisted on keeping the same small room and the same basic routine. Kelly Brooks left for her new assignment on the synthoid world. On her last day, she found Danny in the central hub, replacing the same cooling system valve that had started everything. I am going to miss our lunch conversations, she said. I will miss them too, Danny replied. But you are going to help a lot of people with their food problems. Are you sure you do not want to take one of the off-world positions? You could see amazing things and solve incredible problems. Danny looked around the central hub. Humans and aliens were working together on various projects. A Valorian engineer was discussing power distribution with a human technician. A Nexari scientist was collaborating with a human biologist on atmospheric processing. A synthoid was learning to repair systems using human intuitive methods instead of relying completely on computer analysis. I am seeing amazing things right here, Danny said, and there are always problems to solve. 6 months later, Danny was cleaning the conference rooms after a major diplomatic meeting when he overheard Ambassador Kretal talking to Commander Zexhai. The human approach to problem-solving has changed everything, Ambassador Kretal said. My people are learning to work with incomplete information instead of waiting for perfect data. Valorian military engineers are being trained in human intuitive methods, Commander Zexhai replied. We are solving problems in hours that used to take months. Danny smiled as he continued cleaning. The galaxy was learning that there were many different ways to be intelligent, and that sometimes the simplest approach was the most effective. That evening, Danny sat in his small room and looked at the photo of his old military unit. His former squad mates were scattered across human space now, working normal jobs and living normal lives. But maybe their normal jobs were more important than anyone had realized. Danny rolled up his sleeves and looked at his tattoo. The compass, rose and the geometric patterns that had started everything. He had gotten the tattoo to remember the devices he had disarmed and the lives he had saved. Now it represented something bigger, the idea that every person's experience and skills had value, even if that value was not immediately obvious. The next morning, Danny woke up at 5 o'clock and checked his computer for work orders. The cooling system in Section F needed attention, and someone had reported a strange noise in the main conference room. Danny loaded his cart with tools and cleaning supplies, just like he had done every day for the past 4 years. He was still a janitor who fixed broken things and cleaned up after important people. But now everyone understood that keeping the lights on and the water flowing was just as important as making speeches and negotiating treaties. Some people were meant to be in the spotlight. Other people were meant to make sure the spotlight actually worked. Both jobs mattered, and finally, everyone knew it.